Hey, so welcome back to Postie TV. Today we're going to put gearbox back in Ct110 engine. I've gone over the videos and had the engines pulled apart, split the cases. Basically, we're just going to put the gearbox back in. I'm going to show you how I do it, in the order in which I do it. I've got one up here that I did recently, and I will try and keep it as simple as I can, and I'll try and not talk as much as I can, and just so that if you are doing this and you want to go back through the video, you don't have to fast forward and rewind through a whole heap of me talking, and you can work out what you want to do. So let's get started. So the first thing I do is I put the kickstart in. So kickstart, this guy, it's got a spring, it's got the gears there, and this plate on it. Now on the end here, it has a sleeve, okay, that goes inside there, okay, and then followed by that is the spring. Now the spring basically, I don't know if you can see it, you want this shorter part of the spring to hook up on this, so you have it like that, and that will go like that, and basically that arm comes down. Then I just put the stand on the engine on its side a little bit, just so that I've got room for the kickstart to come through. Slide that in. Now I'll try and do it so you can see. Alright. I don't know how good the lighting is here, but that lug there goes on the engine here, okay? So that stops on it. You'll probably see a bit of wear on this where that hits. So what I do first off is I turn that around, so that's in. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is get this part in here. So you can just do that by lifting up the whole arm, sliding it around till that slots in. This may have to come out now, so that's in. So that spring with a rounded bit goes in there, that lug goes in there. Okay, can you see that? And then to tension it, we've got to take this end of the spring back around, and it hooks in there, okay? So, out, grab it, slide around. Again, you'll see a bit of a wear on the casing where that spring will sit in. Make sure that's pushed in all the way. That's now the kickstart in. That will be spring loaded, so if you turn it, it will spring back. Stop on the log. Just make sure that that stays in all the way while you're doing this. So what I normally do is I'm trying to put this in a position where you can see everything. Stand the casing up like that so it's on a bit of an angle, so that it'll actually help you see as well. Next thing I do, so I'm just going to assume that you've got bits of gears everywhere and you're going, I don't know what this one is. Where did this go? I've pulled it apart a year ago. Where's it go? One of the gears here, and it's got all the holes in it, so it's got 6 holes in it. Now that's that, and on the other side is flat. Some engines do have a flat washer, shim maybe, if you want to call it, that goes behind these where the engine casing goes. If you look up the parts list, there's no indication of them. Some engines I've pulled apart have them in, some don't. That doesn't mean that they're all meant to have it and they've worn out and fallen out. So if someone does know the answer, I'd love to know if those shims or flat washers are meant to go between the casing and the back of the gear. But again, on the parts list and every diagram I've seen, they don't have them. That doesn't mean there isn't a diagram of them. So that goes in here. So that goes up above the kickstart. The reason that I do that next, is that I can, you know, work progressively. Then I'm going to put a bearing in. I'll go in the casing here. I probably should have done that before I did that. So you put the bearing in the casing. They shouldn't need to be really hitting. Most of the ones I know, they bit of oil and they'll slot in when they're in the right position. So once the bearing's in, put that gear with the 6 holes facing up there. Now we're going to look for the next part. So the next part is this guy. Alright. So this is the one that goes through and has a primary gear with a split ring, circlip ring goes on here. So you can tell with a thin line through there that's what it is. The front sprocket, or sprocket drive, has a bigger check out here for that plate to go into. So that will tell you which one's which, and that goes in through the bearing so that the primary drive bit goes out onto the clutch side. Again, with a little bit of a wiggle and a little bit of oil on it, it will go through. You can pull that other gear up, it's just sitting there. Okay, and that sits in there. You can see this, I'll move you a little bit closer. Okay, that's in there now. So the next thing we want to do is probably put our drum in. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. You need a couple of hands to get it in. With the drum, right, the way that I always remember it is this with the flat side and the little indicator for the neutral is the top as you look at it. The other side has the holes for the gear selector plate to go on. So always do that is the top, and then the top arm slides towards the front of the engine, and the top arm has the smaller sprocket, the smaller gear. These are the gears. This one has the locators, goes down, and it will make sense when you look at it, because if you look on this one, the one that we just put in, it's got some lugs on top that for getting the drum, that slots into perfectly. So we just remove that, put it on the front side of the drum. The rear one, which is the lower one, it's a little bit lower than the other one, is the big drive, and then that has these 3 lugs, and it goes onto the gear that we put in with the 6 holes. Now, it will fit in there again. It's the only one it will fit in. So if you want to play with them, you can work out which one's which before you start putting it together. But they will only go into the ones that they go into. So that will sit in there quite nicely. So I'll put that on the drum again. I like to put them on the drum, and then I like to put the drum in at this point. Now, it takes a little bit of fiddling. The main thing is, catching bits as they come out, is this one at the front, the smaller one, lines up on the teeth. It's got a keyway and it will only sort of go one way. So I like to just sort of work out which way that's going to go, and then I just try and put it so I'm close as I come in. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way and do this at the same time. I'll put that on, spin it around. It's always a little bit fiddly, this part. I could even take that. I normally do it the other way and have my hands all over it. Okay, that's in there now. So slot him in, make sure the drum goes into its locator. I can turn this gear and make sure it's going to sit down where it has to go. Okay, so that's that part done. Now we take the front sprocket drive, if we want to call it that, unless you take the circlips off and remove these gears, they'll stay on there. So I don't really normally do that unless it's really worn or there's a need to replace it, but most of the time you just leave them on. So I'll put that on. Then with the 2 holes, the oil fill feeder holes on the side, that's what goes into that large 6-hole sprocket or gear, that we put in originally. So again, that takes a little bit of lining up. You got to turn it until you get the keyway right. A bit of jiggling, and that will slide in and locate in. Okay. Now, with the gears, as far as where the neutral is and all that sort of stuff, really doesn't matter too much at the moment. We'll turn that around when we get onto the other side. So the last gear I've got left is this one with the 3 locos on one side, flat on the other, and that slides down and goes on there on the front, which is a primary gear drive. Now, if you've done it right, this gear here and that front gear will be flush. Okay, if they're not sitting flush, then something's not right. And then you will have your bearing, which you can either put on this. I find it easier to put it on the other casing on the other side. But I'll put it on there just so you know where that goes, and that's on this engine. That's our front sprocket, there's our seal, that's that on the inside, so that's the bearing there. I'll put him back without shaking you around too much. Alright, I hope I'll try to make that as simple as I can. I've done this a few times, I just don't want to confuse you. I hope that helps. I hope it, really makes it clear. What I am going to do now is just so that we can make it fresh and keep it in your minds. This engine's been done. We'll basically just put our bottom end bearings and conrod in with this. Just make sure the side with the keyway and the thread is the one that sits up as it goes in. So it will just slide in like that. Okay, that's pretty much inside of the casing done. Put your gasket on all the way around. You've got your dowels. So I'd normally put my dowels in, one down the front there, one up the back, and then I sit my gasket on, and that will sit on the dowels, and that will be all nice and even. Make sure everything's clean, make sure there's no debris inside the engine. Yeah, and then just put the gasket on, and then slide the other casing on. Make sure that your kickstart's still in after all the moving. Make sure all those gears are in. Make sure that this little plate for your neutral indicator is sitting flat. And then once you've got the gasket and all that, you gently slide on, bit of a wiggle, bit of a tweak, and get your other casing on. And then you can put your screws on, and you'll end up to what this one is. I'm just very going to quickly, and this is all I'm going to do in this video, is I'm going to pull this apart, okay, just the same way that I put it together, and that might just help you, again, with just the orientation of the way that everything goes. So big end out. I'm going to take the bearing off sprocket drive. We've got the flat gear at the front with the 3 little locos at the back. Then we've got our front sprocket drive, which will slide out with those 2 gears. And this is the point where we put the drum in, so I will take the drum out, and I'll keep those gears still in it and put that away together. We've explained in the video which one's which, so you can pull that apart later. Once that's apart, then we'll take out the primary drive. Actually, I probably should just take out this 6 locator sprocket. I'm sure they have names, but that's what I call it. Take out this primary drive gear. The bearing that was attached to that has come out at the same time. That's out. And then we'll release the spring on the kickstart. You can take this spring and the guide off at that point if you're removing it. And then it means you can just slide that out easily. And then you're left with your case again, okay? So, I can do that again, but you've got me putting it all together at the start. I hope that's clear. I hope that helps you out. The next video will be sort of finishing that off, putting bolts and bits and pieces, but I wanted to keep that as it was. Alright, I'll stop rambling on. Thanks for watching. I hope that helps you out, and we'll speak to you soon. See ya.